populations are, the subgroup populations are within the state of California, but you also have to do the qualitative side. You have to meet with groups and find out, especially as you devise the strategies, what are the actual barriers and structures that are allowing some groups to advance the universal goal and holding others back.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner McMillan?
Yeah, thank you for that. I had never heard of targeted universalism, so you just educated me on that. And not knowing that being a part of the labor movement, we kind of are already doing that, especially with family child care, because we work out of our homes. And so for us to even find out about our union and what we have to do, it has to be brought to us. Is that how it works? Am I doing a good comparison, or am I not?
Well, I'd have to hear a little bit more, but I think that part of what we're suggesting here is that to get everyone to the universal goal requires a multitude of strategies, and one size actually does not fit all, and that one size fits all. An approach that's just singular or universal can actually exacerbate inequality. It can make things worse. And so I appreciated what Gail had to say about harmonizing approaches, but also being flexible is part of what I heard. I think that the trick, though, with target universalism is that it's not actually just targeted, that you're actually thinking about the universal goal. And we think about inequality, we often focus on getting, say, what Latinx students or African American students to where white students are. But in many places, what white students have shouldn't be the goal, right? We're trying to get everyone to the universal goal. And so there really is a distinction between targeting, which might, in some places look like an affirmative action strategy, and actually getting everyone to the universal goal, which means creating the supports and the ladders and the capacities to do that. So I think you're there.
So you really are shifting a paradigm, so to speak. So
that's right.
It's like bringing the dartboard to the dart?
In some cases, it can
I'm a
be.
dart player,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm like. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on now with Graham Dobson.
Good afternoon, Assembly members and commissioners. I'm Graham Dobson. I work at the San Francisco of Early Care and Education. We're a recently formed office where we consolidated all of the funding that was for 0 to 5-year-olds in San Francisco under one roof. So whereas previously we had 3 separate city departments sort of working with those funding sources, we brought it under one roof as an office of ECE. And recently we've implemented a new funding mechanism for our early care and education system in the city, which we've called our Early Learning Scholarship. So I think it's just an example of something, to give a model of what we're thinking is of how to expand access and also especially to high quality environments. So just some context, I think as a model, San Francisco is difficult because we're a pretty unique place, as we're both, a city and a county, and we only have one school district. And we do have some significant local investments in early care and education through some set-asides and tax set-asides that come to ECE specifically. So we have a lot of local investments that we can use, which isn't always the case in other counties. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I think you all know we're a high-cost county. Rents are ridiculous, and it's really hard to do business there and to live there. But we do have about 44,000 children under the age of 5 as part of our population. This just gives a little bit of a breakdown of the income of the families that are within those 44,000 children. The yellow is our children, both infants and toddlers and preschool age, who are under the state subsidy eligibility of 85% of the SMI. The SMI doesn't really work in San Francisco because it's a state median income, and that doesn't really work with us. So, we've been working in our office, not just looking at the state subsidized eligible families, but also what we call our low to moderate income families, who are between 85% of the SMI and 110% of the area median income, which is a significant difference when you look at the AMI as opposed to the SMI.
Can I just ask you a quick question right there? And I'm sorry, my Assemblymember Mr.
I know,
Ting,
he would be the perfect
he told
audience.
me that he had said so low he had to go back to San Francisco. But they say the joke that the last person with a family closed the door on the way out of San Francisco. What you're showing here is that you're seeing that right here for 0 to 2, it's different from 3 to 5, right?
Yeah.
So you're seeing that the newer families are already, the income is higher, correct? So,
Correct. So, and then the green here is families with income above 110% of the
Yeah.
AMI. So currently, our target population within our system that we're funding locally, just because to really cover the actual costs of providing high quality care. We know that a lot of the programs that are receiving funding from the state and from the feds, the reimbursement rates, the daily reimbursement rates, just don't go anywhere near meeting the cost of actually providing high quality care. And one of the things that we're really looking for is continuity of care. That once a child enters the system at any age, from 0 to 5, that we will guarantee funding for that family to receive services from whenever they enter the system up to when they enter kindergarten. You know, there's been so much churning in and out of eligibility and target populations, priority populations that we are working with, that's really focusing on. Low-income African American and Latino families, English language learners, homeless families, children who are in the child welfare system, and children with special needs. We do, African American and Latino families, we are specifically calling out because we see a lot of those discrepancies in the kindergarten readiness in San Francisco, despite all of our investments and work towards minimizing that. We are seeing these differences in kindergarten readiness scores. And so we really want, with Latino and African-American families as opposed to Asian and white families. So that's why, there is a priority for services in certain communities and within certain demographics. We really want to fully utilize the state and federal funding that's coming to the county. We don't want to leave dollars on the table. We want to use all of the state money that we get, all of the federal money that we get, because we know that our local dollars are way more flexible, and we can do a lot more with that. So we want to leverage those state and federal dollars. And like I said before, we really want to try to assist more moderate income families, because the state eligibility or the federal eligibility doesn't necessarily work for the reality of some of our families in San Francisco. So I won't go through all of this. I just want you to know that we have a citywide plan for early care and education. There was a huge community process. I think it lasted over a year, lots of feedback sessions, lots of forums. And that's our vision for where we're going as a city. We have a document that's our guiding star. I think but one thing I did want to highlight from this is that really the idea of going out into the community, doing lots of input sessions, meeting with provider associations, with the local planning council, First Five, our the Family Child Care Association members. We went out, parent voices. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of community input before we move forward with our early learning scholarship funding system. And that was launched just in July last year. So we're still in the first year of implementation. So it's been interesting. So this again is our sort of the citywide plan, our strategic framework that guides our work. You can see that the recommendations at the top around a birth to 5 approach, equity and diversity, quality improvement, family engagement, professional development and workforce, and the financing models. And the financing models specifically are as our early learning scholarship, providing fairer rates to providers, and continuity of care for families. And that's what we'll be focusing on today. I think we already talked about this. Again, this is one of our overarching goals, is we don't want disqualifying circumstances or going over the income level for eligibility to be a barrier to continuity of care. So one of our real overarching sort of framework is you're in up till kindergarten, and no matter what. So how much does high quality ECE cost in San Francisco? Well, it might not. This is sort of our the overarching kind of idea behind what our early learning scholarship is. So we have center rates and we have family child care rates. And we had a comprehensive fiscal analysis that was done by a national team that came out to San Francisco. They met with center directors, teachers, families, family child care providers. to really look at the, all of the things that went into what it cost to provide early care and education services. That was I think a 9-month process where we did this really intensive CFA, and it's actually available on our website. It's very detailed. It's like 200 pages. And what we came up with were these benchmark rates for each age group within center and FCC. So for infants, our annual rate would be for high quality, and our benchmark is tier 3 of the state QRIS. So there's to be eligible to be an early learning scholarship, provider, center, or family child care educator in our network. There was a guarantee that you were either already at tier 3 of the QRIS, or for family child care, because there are some, that's the QRIS certainly is not as accessible, and it may require more time. There was a commitment to move towards tier 3 at the QRIS for the family child care educators. So we're using tier 3 as our baseline. So what would it cost to provide tier 3 quality ECE in both centers and family child care? And for centers, for an infant, it was $27,476 a year. For a toddler, it's $20,935 a year. And for a preschooler, it was $17,069 a year. And we're already getting feedback from our network that that's not enough, that those rates are not enough and still don't match the cost of actually providing high quality care in a county like San Francisco. So for some of our children in the city that don't qualify for any federal or state subsidies, we will provide vouchers, locally funded vouchers that would pay that full rate of those amounts up to that tier 3 base rate. For families that are receiving subsidies from Title V or Head Start or state vouchers, CalWORKs vouchers, we will pay the gap between what the reimbursement rate is from the state up to the tier 3 local rate. And that's sort of our gap funding to bring everybody up to that same amount per child. For Head Start, often they braid and blend funding with Head Start and Title V. Again, we'll bridge that gap so that it can bring it up to the San Francisco rate. So, also we have universal PFA that is not income based, and we still have tuition credit for families regardless of income for 4-year-olds who are eligible for preschool for all. So that's kind of our goal eventually is to get to tiered reimbursements for both tier 4 and tier 5 in the QRIS. We're not there yet because we don't have the resources to be able to do that currently. Sorry, this is a lot of those little things that I didn't put in, but there you go. So again, I think this is for you. You have this in your handouts. It shows you the rates. One thing I just wanted to highlight here, this is center. Again, on our website, in our operating guidelines, you can find all the rates for family childcare and centers. But we do pay a 5% differential, even on the full day, full year rates for those programs that provide continuity of care from infant through 5-year-olds. So again, an incentive to serve the full range of infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, because infants and toddlers are the biggest unmet need for services in San Francisco. So, again, I mentioned that we really wanted to utilize state and federal funding. As part of our screening for locally funded services, we look to see if a family is eligible for any state or federal funding before they're fully reimbursed at our early learning scholarship rate. So we want to see if a family comes in to our resource and referral agencies, are they eligible for Head Start? Are they eligible for Title V? Could they be on a CalWORKs voucher? If not, are they eligible for our early learning scholarship and we'll pay the full rate, as opposed to just the gap between the state or federal funding. We do have a pilot. We are a pilot county, so we're very lucky. We have 24-month eligibility, and 85% of the SMI is an entrance income. So that has made a difference in earning our state contracts. So I think I've gone through most of what was before and what we have with our early learning scholarships as far as reimbursement rates and continuity of care. You can see that the difference between the income for families, that at 85% of the SMI at $103,000 for a family of 3 is the cliff. With our 110% of the AMI, it's $103,000 for a family of 3. So it's a significant difference in earnings that a family could make and still be eligible for some form of subsidy for early care and education. And again, quality applies to all of our that accountability and quality insurances for all of the centers and FCCs that are in our network. So quality, has it, have we seen any impact in what's been going on as far as, we have this requirement to participate in the QRS to be part of our system? And this is from First 5 San Francisco. The orange is 2014 and 2016, where this is both centers and family child care providers combined. And then the green is the 2016 and 2018. So you can see that we have none of our agencies that are within our network are in Tier 1. We have very few in Tier 3. But the majority of our programs are in Tier 4 and Tier 5. So we hope and we make some assumptions, but we think the investments that we're making in quality, TA, coaching, all the support systems that we have in place that are part of our network have access to, have made some significant improvements in our quality scores. And family child care educators, we have 2 family child care quality networks that are housed at our 2 resource and referral agencies. Again, we fund that through our office, and they provide the coaching and TA and direct involvement with the family child care homes that are in those networks. And the family child care homes that are part of our ELS program are required to be in the QN, quality network, to get those services. Lessons learned. Reimbursement rates should meet the actual cost of providing the care instead of 50% or less. Continuity of care is vital. Starting early is vital. Everyone talks about, instead of pre-K, we want to start as early as possible, and it's really vital to provide that support for 0 to 3-year-olds as well as 3 and 4-year-olds. Childcare cliffs, they need to be smoothed. Those edges just need to be smoothed so to make it easier for families. The existing subsidy systems, there's different ages, requirements for the between the vouchers and they have different age categories for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, and it's just like, it can get really complicated when you're trying to work within a fragmented system. A mixed delivery system is vital. We found that we work with, both with our family child care educators and our community-based organizations and our school district. Data has been, we really need a consolidated data to be able to do the work that we do in San Francisco, and that's an ongoing struggle for us, and we're working on that. It's challenging. There you go, that's a lesson learned. It's very challenging. Bright spots. We've improved the leveraging of state and federal dollars for eligible children because we're giving an incentive for programs to earn those dollars now and take those vouchers and use Title V dollars because we're paying the difference. Instead of getting a reimbursement rate that doesn't meet your cost of care and you're constantly in the red, we say we'll pay you more on top of that to serve those children. Continuity of care. And part of our system is e-signature, looking at electronic signature system across the board to capture that data really efficiently. We have had some bright spots with additional funding for our system, specifically homeless children and for infant toddlers. And we have a ballot measure going on in June to raise another $140 million for our ELS system, which would be amazing if that passes. It's been a massive system change in San Francisco, and that has not been without its rocky road this first year. I think we found that we moved from a funding per site model, that we had different strategies to address different areas of the field, something for compensation, something for infants and toddlers, something for quality. And what we've done is we've amalgamated all of those different funding streams into one early learning scholarship, which is a child-based a fee for service based on children enrollment. So that was a huge system shift, and change is difficult, and the programs that were being funded by the city when we brought in this new system, definitely there was some challenges to that change in how we were funding the services. We didn't have a very long timeline for planning and implementation, so we had a quick turnaround, so it all happened way too quickly. And I think our services about enrollment for getting children in empty spaces in programs as quickly as possible. We were already building on a system that wasn't as efficient as we should have been. Our eligibility list, we still have a centralized eligibility list in San Francisco. We kept that on after the state defunded those, and so our system just wasn't ready for this new change in this funding system, and so we had some the first few months we weren't getting children in those empty spaces as quickly as we should have, and so that was a challenge. And again, the data systems I think have been challenging. So we're working on data systems. We're working on our new eligibility list. So that was quick. Sorry, I knew that we were kind of running out of time.
No, thank you. I'll start off with a few questions. I have the mic here, so I'll kind of blend this commission hat and my budget hat. So I oversee the budget subcommittee for ECE, and looking at the state preschool program and the rate structure and your families that are now in San Francisco. We've increased slots the last few years, as well as not marginally, but we've increased the rates last few years as well. So how's that sorting out in trying to find families that match the opportunity that we're putting out from CD for the state preschool program?
Oh, I mean, that's an integral part of our system. I mean, I think the majority of the programs that we work with, the centers that we work with in our ELS, our Early Learning Scholarship, are Title V programs.
I get that, but are you having trouble finding families, is what I'm saying? Are you utilizing all the resources that we are giving you from the state? Some districts, some communities are saying we're having a tough time.
We're not, but we're doing better. And I think two of the things that I think that, as a pilot county, we've been looking at the earnings of our contracts very, very closely over the last 12 years. And we've seen this year that we're doing better than we did last year. Two of the things, I think, one, the ELS, this reimbursement rate, this incentive to earn the contract, because you're not getting the state rate. Is an incentive to enroll more children instead of taking. A lot of our programs are mixed income and have families that pay fees as well, and so reducing the number of family fee families, but taking more Title V or voucher children, for example, because we're paying on top of that. So it's not because the reimbursement rate from the state is encouraging them to do it, but because we're helping support them in meeting the cost of providing care. And then the other thing that I think has made a difference is some of the state policies that have changed recently. Statewide, we have 12-month eligibility. Once you're in, you're good for 12 months unless there's been a change, to the income level. And in San Francisco, we have 24-month eligibility, the same as the pilot counties. And so I think that, again, that focus on eligibility and family, family eligibility, and taking that away a little bit, and it's been, you're good for a longer period of time, has meant that, again, that there's more opportunities for programs to use those, the state funding.
Okay, and while you're here, you're a practitioner. We had our last hearing down in the desert, and we heard from the area down there, the Riverside School District, talking about the TK opportunities and state preschool, and how does San Francisco kind of manage that with if you have a kid that's born in March and so they're not eligible for TK, but they could be eligible mid-year? What are you doing there? Do you enroll them part year, and how does that work?
It's up to that's a family choice. It's like we will enroll a child for as long as they need to be before they go into the school district. But
do you enroll them in the state preschool program and then mid-year transition, or how do you do that?
We don't have a specific policy around state preschool and TK. Again, I think that happens. I think sometimes a family might start in a state preschool program and then realize that there's a TK program with spaces down the road, and they don't have to pay a fee there, for example, because it's in the school district. So again, I think that's a lot of parental choice. We don't give any instructions to our programs about what ages they start.
But have you figured out how to braid the two to help the families, essentially?
No. The answer is no. Short answer is no.
Here we go.
Assemblymember, I have a 4.5-year-old who's turning 5 September 7th, and I can walk you through what an incredibly difficult and challenging, stressful process it is.
Yeah,
we don't have to do it now.
I know
but
you mentioned that our last hearing too.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kong.
So you talked about how you've moved to quality standards that vary by setting, and then now it's the same high quality standards for all the settings. What have you learned about the workforce there? You mentioned compensation, you mentioned coaching.
Well, compensation is probably the biggest challenge that we have in San Francisco. Every meeting that we have with our grantees, every meeting that we go out to the community, there's a workforce crisis in San Francisco. We have classrooms that aren't open because programs can't find teachers to work in those classrooms. I think. So compensation is incorporated. The wages were incorporated as part of the fiscal analysis as to what people. So instead of having a wage-specific initiative, which we used to have, we've sort of with a higher reimbursement rate per child, we thought that was absorbed in this new scholarship. What we found is that again we're just hearing that it's not enough. That the wages have gone up. We're looking at minimum compensation ordinances that would bring up the minimum wage with city-funded programs above the minimum wage of up to over $16 an hour. So everything we just can't keep up with what the educators need to make and should be making. So in this new ballot measure that's coming out in June, if it passes, part of the language is around compensation for the educators that are part of our ELS. So we're increasing the reimbursement rates to specifically address that. But we do have a professional development piece. That's the work that we do. So it's very specific. We have a whole PD, professional development a work that's part of our office that is a completely different, a system that we work with First Five, we work with our higher ed institutions, we work with the school district around access to our educators, the teachers and the family child care educators to trainings and workshops and ongoing education.
Thank you. Commissioner Ignatius? Were you finished? Deborah? Yeah.
Graham, since this is the financing conversation, I don't know, did you describe, these local dollars came out of a previous ballot initiative, correct?
They did, yes, but,
Yeah.
but we had a property tax set aside for our children's fund, and then which a portion of that goes to 0 to 5-year-olds. So that used to be housed at our Department of Children, Youth and Families, and the funding that's allocated to 0 to 5 is now under our house. Then First Five used to run our Preschool for All initiative, and that was funded by a general fund set aside, which is the Public Education and Enrichment Fund. Again, that funding was allocated over to our office to under one roof. And then we have some, we also administer some CalWorks, some state dollars, that's part of that, but the majority of our money is, and then we have general fund as well, some general fund. So it's 2 set-asides, general fund, and some state funding. We have a budget in our office of about $113 million.
And can you break down how much of that was these set-asides and local versus what state?
I should be able to, but
Okay.
I can't right now. But I can get that to you. I didn't. It was in the other PowerPoint that I took it out because I thought you wouldn't be interested in that.
Commissioner McMillan.
So I think what you have presented is remarkable, especially with what you guys have done in such a short time frame. I think it's amazing. I have a dream. Not Martin Luther King's, my own. And I attend a lot of town halls, a lot of candidates running for seats and so forth. And I always hear them say, I want to make sure that families have jobs that they can go to and that their kids can get into whatever college they want to. But not once have I heard them say, I want to make sure that families have jobs that they can go to that pay them well and that their children and their babies can have quality early education and care. Not once. I think what you have here might change that conversation. I'm hoping that this would be the beginning of changing that conversation. And my dream is that I can go to a town hall and hear what I just said. Let's start at the beginning. Don't jump to the end. Start at the beginning. And maybe if we use that targeted universalism, then we don't have to have the teacher bring the children. We can have the children bring the teacher.
Absolutely.
But I'm so impressed with this, and I definitely want to learn more about it.
Come to San Francisco. We'll give you a tour.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Olenek.
Well, I could ask a dozen questions, but I won't. The one that I'm really interested in is, as you sort of raise the rate, you talked about having trouble getting teachers and not having classroom open, but I'm wondering, you're seeing anything in terms of supply, or do you still have a lot of families that are using unlicensed care or other mechanisms?
So a higher percentage of families in San Francisco with vouchers are actually using licensed care than unlicensed. I mean, family, friends, and neighbors in San Francisco. What the next phase, to your point about family, friends, and neighbors, and what are we doing there? That's the next phase, and we've actually just put out some grant funding, for people to apply for, and for innovative ideas, and one of them is around working with family, friends, and neighbors, and maybe looking at a higher reimbursement rate for those family, friend, and neighbor providers who would like to do some quality workshops and to get some training and be part of a system and get a higher reimbursement rate to provide care for their children. So that's a next phase. This is still, like I said, this is our first year of implementation, and so it's we're learning as we go. But we also see that potentially. I think that could be a pathway for. I think that was mentioned before for family, friends, and neighbors to maybe go into licensed care if they get a taste of it through some quality workshops and trainings. Yeah, I think we are lucky. We do have I think we have a pretty good supply. We're obviously not meeting all the need, and infant and toddler care and education is our biggest unmet need, and has been for decades. And so we really want to incentivize centers and family child care owners to serve that 0 to 3 population. That's our biggest struggle. We're at probably 95% of preschoolers who are eligible, being more than 95% for subsidies, who are in some form of services. So we're doing very well with preschool.
Wow, that's remarkable.
Yeah, AIR actually reports 127%.
It's targeted universalism right here. So. Yes, Commissioner Boothie.
Graham, thank you. Always a pleasure to hear from you and figure out the fun stuff. As a San Francisco resident myself, I always like to hear what we're doing there as well. I'm curious about the competitive nature of the amount of funding that you're putting out. According to your chart, it's about $17,000, right, for a preschooler per year, which is significantly higher than the standard reimbursement rate currently across the state. How competitive is that to a private pay program?
It's not.
Nowhere close.
No, we've just looked at some. We have some information about what some private. We're recognizing that even our higher ELS or early learning scholarship rates aren't meeting some of the private pay rates in the city, and so we do have some private for-profit agencies that are part of our network who primarily serve private paying families, but want to serve some subsidy-eligible families within our funding source. And we're looking at the differences, and we're not meeting the rates that they're charging their families. So even with our ELS, they're taking a loss with the rates that they would normally charge to serve the families that we fund. So we are seeing that we're not that competitive as we thought we were.
Do you know about what percentage it is?
I don't, but I can get that information to you. I have.
Because that would be interesting, because I mean, certainly as we're looking at workforce issues, when we're looking at compensation, when we're looking at capacity issues, especially for 0 to 3, I think it'd be really interesting to know what the other going rates are and what percentage it is, even with this bump.
We have that information. I can get that. I'll be happy to share that with the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McCroskey.
So thank you, all three of you. Really interesting. Push my
button, yes. Very interesting confluence of presentations. Thank you all so much. But I really have to add somewhat unusual compliment, Graham, which is that in LA we're very inspired by the work you're doing in San Francisco. And we're in particular inspired by the idea of really generating a comprehensive financial analysis. We've been doing some counting of state and federal subsidy funds that come in, that flow into our county on a regular basis, but we're not including everything. And we obviously we don't have the history of local investment that you do, but we've got a lot of investments out there, and coordinating them is not a bad thing to do, right? So we're actually already in discussion with the same team that you use for your financial analysis.
Glad to hear that. That's great.
And it's just a really wonderful shot in the arm for us to be able to say they did it in San Francisco, even though we got more than one city and more than one school district and so forth and so on. But it's really inspiring and very, very helpful to hear your updated report about what the sort of next challenges are.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Campos-Rivera.
Thank you for your great presentation. Just out of curiosity, when both the set aside, the initiatives were put in the ballot, and I'm not even sure what year, 2016.
Well, they were actually they were both what's the word? Rebooted. No, it's not the word. But anyway, they were reauthorized recently in 2016. Both of those set asides that I mentioned under one children and youth fund.
Can you tell me a little bit of what your communication strategy was for your general audience, for them to understand, just your average family, to understand the importance of investments in early childhood education, commercials, what did you hear that really?
It was a very grassroots effort. I would say that San Francisco is a very political city, and it was grassroots. It was being at the BART stations, it was being on the Muni stations, it was parent voices, it was the educators, the Family Child Care Association. People really rallied around and got the message out there. And I have to say, even though we may have a small child population in San Francisco, we tend to be a pretty liberal voting city that support children and youth initiatives. And so I think we have a very a population there who are open to that, even if they don't have children themselves, see the value in that. But yeah, I mean, as a city agency, we're not able to do that advocacy ourselves. So I think it fell on, our R&Rs, our centers, our parents in those programs to go out and get the word out.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate your contribution. Okay, with that, we will go now to the third part of our agenda, the subcommittee reports. But before we do that, we just wanted to run through. It's up there on the PowerPoint, of course, but this commission's vision was aspirational, looking at basically the long-term systems, programs, and financing, steps in the immediate and short-term, funding issues, federal, state, and local, and the role of philanthropy in business. Of course, what we wanted to look at what the system should look like for providers, teachers, families. Appreciate the discussion today on equity and disparities. Again, financing what the state could provide as well as what's needed to make sure we have high quality programs meeting our needs, infrastructure, facilities, compensation, certain issues that we're looking at. And then we also, when we began this process, after a meeting or two, really wanted to focus on how we could dig a little deeper in some of these issues. So we introduced the idea of having subcommittees, digging more specifically into topics of financing and economic impact, access, workforce, and meeting the needs of families. And again, the subcommittee tentative plan is this past spring developed an outline on the issues the areas for discussion and hopefully coming close towards where we went ahead with recommendations in a process from now until October, developing the draft recommendations, November and December, cost estimates, phase-in implementation, and then in 2019, January and March, a report coming out. We'll review that, have a review with stakeholders, state agency staff, as well as providers throughout the state of California, and have a final draft. And I will note this will be right about the time we'll have a new governor to the state of California. So we think it's a very timely approach, and hopefully that could serve us well as we look to expand EC in 2019 and beyond. Okay, so with that, we will hear from our 4 subcommittees right now, and we will start with the subcommittee on financing and the economic impact of EC.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll be reporting on this today. I am one of the members, but we have our 2 co-chairs, Nina Boothie and Sonia Campos Rivera, who may jump in and add. But so timely because, as evidenced by the presentation earlier today, we have done a lot of research on the National Academy of Sciences report, not just today, but obviously some of us, I worked on the committee, on the National Committee, and some of us have taken the pieces apart and have been discussing it, and we will continue to look at that. The other is the Learning Policy Institute report, as well as, can we go to the next one? Okay, then creating a financing structure that ultimately incorporates the recommendations of all of the other committees, because we need to look at what are we going to need in terms of the workforce, what are we going to need in terms of providing access, and again, whether it's targeted universalism or universalism, and then what are we going to need in terms of funding the engaging families to support their children in the care and education of their infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. So identifying dedicated funding sources for a well-funded system, and you've heard a lot of that in the previous presentations, that we need to look at what are the local, state, federal dollars, but as well as potential private funding sources. Looking at the priorities for initial investment, you've already heard we're not thinking about this in 1 year, but that it will take us time to get there. So what is it that we need to do first? How do we meet the needs of the families and children to ensure equity? And you've heard from many of the presenters and the members up here of the commission that a big gap is in the infant toddler area. So we've been having a lot of the discussions is, where do we start first? So we need to look at that. What do we need to do to compensate our family child care providers, because they're the least compensated at this particular time. So we're looking at the prioritization for the funding. Then you already heard the presentation, and we're exploring the targeted universalism as a potential framework to look at our future work. Definitely looking at the governance and systems change, including the reimbursement rates, because you heard even for people who are doubling down on their local dollars, it's not enough. So what do we look at that? What about the coordination of any and all other systems? So we need to make sure that coordination and collaboration are part of the design that ultimately our elected officials will look at. And then we are looking at integrating parent leave for parents as part of our recommendations, because part of the early care and education comes first from the parents. That's where it starts. So I will turn it over to Mary.
Okay. I am going to be giving you just a report from our Expanding Access Subcommittee, and sort of I kind of alluded to it earlier with our conversation about targeted universalism, but we are really, I think for a long time when we've talked about access, it's really been about what the unmet need is, and trying to meet that need. But beyond just actual funding for more resources, for more services, we do want to also look and understand what are the barriers for families today when it comes to race, immigration, language, geography, because just getting to the door of the agency that's going to help you get the assistance could be a full-time job and a lot of landmines in between. And so we want to really just try to understand what those are. We want to look at just unique populations, families who are experiencing homelessness, deep poverty, children with special needs, children who are engaged in the child welfare system. And again, just in order for us to get to universalism, we do need to recognize that not all families are going to get there at the same time or in the same path. And so to make sure our recommendations reflect that. One of the ways that we will be doing that is a survey that we're sending out to the field, and particularly to sort of service providers and entities who really understand these unique special populations to help inform what recommendations go forward. We've discussed the possibility of doing a needs assessment as part of the recommendations. We sort of, we have a lot of experts on the commission, but we need to know what families in 2018 need, when they need care, how they need care, what they see as quality, and all of those things. And we'll be, doing a landscape analysis of our eligibility requirements, making sure systems are speaking to one another, looking at the facility needs, and really making sure that in order to be true to our mixed delivery system, that we are not leaving anybody out, and that centers, family child care, and family friend and neighbor care each play a significant piece to our system. And I think with that, I'm passing it to Deb.
So I'm reporting on the Workforce Retention and Development Subcommittee. The co-chairs Celia Ayala and Tanya McMillan, and then another member, Sonia Campos Rivera. These are some of the pieces of research that we've been looking at, but we've been looking at many national studies as well as California's to get that state context. So we're looking at a range of topics, but overall, just to ensure that we have a high-quality workforce that's diverse, that's effective, that's well compensated and professionally supported. And one focus is, of course, the compensation. So we're looking at compensation and really compensating our workers as the professionals that they are, who play a critical role in young children's development. We're also looking at competencies, so competency-based professional preparation for the workforce. Fourth, we're looking at training and preparation, so increasing practitioners' knowledge and the competencies through higher education programs, through credentialing and other forms of professional learning. We want to make sure that there is ongoing professional development, that it's sustainable, that it's consistent and coherent, and that includes favorable working conditions like paid release time. And then the last two have to do with diversity and inclusiveness. So first, diversity across settings, so including family, friend, and neighbor caregivers, and ensuring that we have a diverse workforce that really reflects the children that it serves. And I'll turn it over to the engaging and meeting the needs of families.
Thank you. Following the format of the other subcommittee presentations, we provided a few of the resources that we've been looking at, and one of the ones that may be the most unusual is a book, actually, research book, but it's very, very well done about how parents benefit from the advice of other parents in their same situation, and that child care programs bring parents into proximity with each other, and they can share information not just about child care, but about all kinds of other things. So there's that, and then there's more how do institutions support and engage families. But I think the piece I want to tell you about, because I'm so excited about it, I think all of us are excited about it, is that we have a plan for doing focus groups with parents in different parts of the state, so that we're going to get to collect qualitative data from parents in a whole variety of places, using a whole variety of programs, and with a variety of experiences, so that they can tell us how this looks to them from their own experiences, both what have been the successes and the benefits, but also the challenges of negotiating an extremely complicated system. And so we're expecting that we're going to have results, maybe not the final report of results, but some results from that in the fall, which is wonderful, because it can, as you've been hearing, it will inform, I think, recommendations throughout the report. To actually hear how people use our existing childcare system and where they see the biggest challenges, and also helping to identify where they get their information. Because it is a really complex system. All of our systems are way too complicated, probably for families who are facing multiple challenges and with young children, but it is difficult to negotiate. So we're also looking at what are the roles of informal community-based groups can play in terms of helping parents get connected and understanding where resources and information is. So as I say, we're all very excited about the fact that we're going to be able to hear from many parents, and not just from a couple in this format, but that we're going to be able to develop forums that are really designed to get the best information we can from the people who actually know this system right now better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for any other committee reports? Seeing none. We'll proceed now with public comment. If anybody is here to talk to us, share your ideas.
Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Patterson with California Food Policy Advocates, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring up something that hasn't been discussed when it comes to financing childcare, and that is food. Food is central to caring for children. I can tell you firsthand, as a former Head Start teacher and parent to young children, food is not optional when it comes to taking care of kids during the day. But at the same time, it's something that keeps being seen as a nice to have extra in the state budget, as opposed to something that is core to the business of taking care of kids during the day while their parents are at work. And so I really want to emphasize to the committee just how important it is that we have an adequately funded child care food program in California. Since we cut state funding during the recession, we have not gotten it back. And child poverty rates at this point are still higher than they were in 2007 before the recession. Families haven't recovered while the state economy has. And so it's really critical that we restore the state supplemental funding to the child care food program, because when child care providers don't have that program, they just pull from other parts of the funding. They're pulling from their provider rates, because food isn't optional. When they don't have the program, they make it work regardless. So I really want to make sure that that is something that is being thought of as part of the full picture of both the business model of childcare and what children need during the day.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary Jane McGuire Fong, and I'm here representing PEACH, which is an advocacy group looking at integrating the higher education community in support of quality program, early childhood programs. I want to speak somewhat broadly to what we heard today. What an incredible hearing, and thank you for putting this together. And I hope it is listened to widely across the state on the streaming service. I want to begin by saying thank you for including the issue of parental leave in the discussion, because if we can include parental leave as we talk about the early childhood quality, workforce compensation dilemma, et cetera, we're going to tackle some of the financing questions. The question that I always work with is when we're thinking about the full range of services that we're talking about, birth to 5 here, The question that I always think about is, what do babies ask of us? And if you look at the research, and I understand Ross Thompson from UC Davis was with you a couple of times before, looking at the amazing competence of babies to learn. They ask of us the same thing that 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds ask of us. They ask one thing: are you there for me to support my incredible, amazing capacity to learn? They would like to be close to familiars. So that's how we get into this complex question of who are those familiars to the baby and to the family. So we have to be present to the questions that you ask about the family child care providers within our system and the people who are next door to the family so that they have access. These are complex questions, but from the bigger perspective that Lynn Carolla began with, how do we think about the workforce and the issue of baccalaureate degrees for those people preparing to do this work? We can get there if we keep all of these questions in the mix, which is what you are doing. Peach and other higher education groups have been working tirelessly in California to figure out the question of workforce preparation for early childhood education. It's really complicated. The answers are not clear yet. Yet, one issue is clear: we need rigor. We need rigor. We can't give on rigor. And whether somebody is a teacher or a family child care provider serving infants and toddlers, they need to be paid well, but they also need to be prepared well. And so looking at ways to do a system that is going to be complex. In San Francisco, my God, you're really, leading the way on tackling complex questions. But I honestly believe we can get there.
Thank you.
In the name of quality care. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I didn't say it earlier, but if you can try to keep it to a minute or two. There's not a huge line, so we'll be a little bit generous, but thank you.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Neal, and I'm a child care provider in Sacramento County, and also a union member of UDW and CCPU. While collective bargaining was not discussed in today's hearing, I would like to take the time to say child care providers across the state need the right to collective bargaining so we can better meet the needs of the children we care for and their families. With the help in the right collective bargaining, we can work together as a family child care advocate to improve access to high quality and affordable child care for all Californians. We need early childhood education recognize the important work it is. Collective bargaining will give us a seat at the table so we can better advocate for ourselves and for our families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Hannah Melnick with the Learning Policy Institute. First, I just want to thank each of you and the presenters today for taking up these important issues and as Commissioner Ayala said, really trying to be innovative. I brought and shared copies of our reports with you on California's early learning system, which we appreciate the Finance Committee is already taking up and starting to look at. And we just want to say that we're happy to talk with you more about what we recommend. For example, providing programs on a sliding fee scale, reforming reimbursement rates, facilities supports, and contracts so that we have an adequate supply of licensed providers, having dedicated funding for professional learning for all educators, and making the system more accessible, for example, through an online portal for families and providers. We also want to flag for all of you that at the Learning Policy Institute, with others, we're working on looking at some of the costs of these recommendations. So I'd really like to share some of that work with you, hopefully soon, before I add to the unmet need for infant care. And we look forward to engaging with you and really hope that it will be a valuable resource, especially as you prepare for your final report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Peter Barth from First 5 LA. And as I hope you hear at every single Blue Ribbon Commission meeting, not only on behalf of First 5 LA, but all First 5s, we're ready to roll up our sleeves and support you in any way possible. We believe firmly in the success of the Blue Ribbon Commission and how important it is that this commission's work succeeds. We applaud the Commission's conversation around financing, a really critical and much overlooked component of how we expand access to early learning in California. We urge you in the First Five community to be bold and ambitious. For too long, our approach has been merely targeted, including through the limited funding in First Fives, and now is the time to have a really bold vision for what an equitable system would look like. We also applaud the conversation around targeted universalism. It is an approach that in First 5 LA we endorse wholeheartedly. And we believe that if other countries and other states can do this, we can do it here in California. And we look forward to working with you as you roll out your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Kate Miller with Children Now, and just want to express our appreciation for the big picture vision of financing an ECE system that will more equitably meet the needs of our children, and the more nuanced, detailed discussion about cost determining factors like livable wages and of course quality supports. And we heartily express the need to go beyond the status quo, and we know that the costs cannot be understated. Particularly given our population, we know obviously extraordinarily diverse and predominantly low income. So we really need to ensure that the programs that we're talking about are of quality, and that they're going to produce the outcomes that we tout, that we advocate for in our work. And also just echoing some of the discussion that came up today, we really encourage that aggressive thinking about the role of the state in providing childcare and early learning services. The question of governance can't be separate from the question of financing. And so it's really not just like, what is it going to cost, but what are we paying for and who's accountable for making sure that it's delivered and implemented. And then just also want to heartily agree that there's this ultimately a need for a methodical, meaningful transition plan, really to get us to point A to point B over a period of years. And then we need to take into account various scenarios that factor in changing economy, potential new revenue sources, and other factors. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Christina Negrelli. I am Senior Director of Programs for 0 to 3 here in California. This is the third meeting that I've had the pleasure of attending, and I just want to commend you on the incredible progress that you're making. I was so excited to hear the updates from each of the work groups and just see how well aligned they are with our mission at 0 to 3 to ensure that all babies and toddlers have a strong start in life, including quality and affordable childcare, but also time for parents to bond with their babies, also noted as paid parental leave. Healthy emotional development and strong physical health and nutrition. Another piece that's really important to hold on to is that every baby has an important story to tell, and that something that we learned from our National Parent Survey is that while parents understand and recognize the importance of early brain development and early learning, they often miss the mark in thinking that those critical time periods for the brain and that development occurs when a child goes to kindergarten instead of during those first 3 years. So I just applaud all of your efforts, especially in really thinking about the needs of babies and toddlers and their families. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jake Ferrer with Council for a Strong America, representing law enforcement, retired military, and business leaders across the state. Thank you for all the amazing work you've done thus far, and thank you in advance for the work that you're going to continue to do. Know that you have, in the form of these leaders, unexpected messengers who have your back. They believe in increasing access to quality, high-quality childhood education, because it's a public safety, a national security, and citizen readiness issue. And again, thank you for all the hard work that you can continue to do. And if you need anything, we're here to support you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments from commissioners? Seeing none, I did want to note that when we started this Blue Ribbon Commission, of course, it's about the plan, the long-term plan, but we didn't get lost that some of us up here have other jobs as well. And so we wanted to use these commission meetings and the information gathered to help frame the issues today and tomorrow. And essentially, we're going to adopt a budget the next month here in California. Just note that our last hearing we had, Riverside, there were some ideas that came up as far as the state preschool program and braiding and eligibility. So we're taking some of those specific ideas and looking to implement them in this year's budget. So while we have our plan that we're looking to unveil a year from now, there is work that has come about this process that is helping us today. So thank you all for participating, and hopefully we'll have some good news on the budget when the next time we see you. And but overall, thanks again for another great hearing and for all of you participating, including the audience. Thank you.